Hey guys, how you doing? Glad everyone on the call today. So going to be myself and Jeremy doing the call, and there's something. This is kind of we bring in a lot of different products throughout throughout the months. There was a time where we were bringing in 2 different products a week and teaching us how to sell them and all that. But it's always good to take a break on bringing products in. And don't get me wrong, we got a bunch more coming in. We're working on other ones. We've got, I know, like at least 3 to 4 to 5 ones already lined up in the queue. But today, I wanted to talk about something very important and with having to do with sales. So, Jeremy, can you pull up that picture, that first picture I sent you? We're going to pull up a picture on the screen here. And I muted everyone out because there was some background noise going on. So if you have anything you want to add to, please just add something into the chat area right there. So what we have here is a picture of Michael Jordan. I'm sure you all have seen this picture or can relate to this. When I was growing up, Michael Jordan was, just the #1 basketball player of all time. And this picture is actually when they won one of the championships. And what people don't realize is the night before he had a chance to win the championship, and he missed a couple of free throws, I think it was, and he lost the game, if I remember correctly. And then the next night, he ended up winning, and that's where this famous shot comes from. And they took the championship right there. Do you remember this? Let me see. Let me take people off of mute now. Jeremy, do you ever watch basketball?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm a Warriors fan.
Do you remember this right here?
It's been exciting the last few years. I do.
Yeah. Anyone else follow basketball at all? I'm sure everyone's heard of Michael Jordan, obviously. So you might ask yourself, how does this picture relate to sales, right? You go, how can this have anything to do with sales? Well, I'm going to tell you, it has a lot to do with sales. So what I want to talk about, we're going to get into a couple things today, but one thing about Michael Jordan is before he would start a game, he would actually have some earplugs in, and people thought he was listening to music, but really he was actually listening to him the different times that he won different games in clutch seasons. So he would go into the game just listening to him winning. He'd focus on winning. And then if he ever did lose a game, what he would do is he would go into practice and then totally forget what happened, like the night before. Like on here, he would just go back in. He wouldn't get discouraged. He would just let that loss go behind him. And then he would move on to hey, we got another game. Let's go after it, right? And so he kept, and also before he'd go into those games, and he was listening to those in his earphones, the different games, he was also mentally seeing himself make the shot, make the big shot, winning the games. And this is something he did on a regular basis. He conditioned himself to think that way, and he kept himself mentally strong. He played when he was sick. He did all types of things. But these are some of the habits. One thing I like to do is I like to study the habits of great people or people that are successful or #1 in their industry, because I think you can learn a lot from that. So when I was doing Yellow Pages, this is something, I used to watch these videos, of him and the championship games all the time, and then we would actually talk about this. But a couple things that I picked up from it, and it can really be helpful for you guys, is when I was doing Yellow Page, #1, I would see myself. And to give you the background, before I started doing Yellow Page sales, I had no sales experience. Only I was helping homeless. I was a PE teacher. I was actually against sales because I didn't like the used car salesman mentality. And I got involved in a company called Earthlink. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was the internet service provider. And I'm not even really around right now, but I ended up becoming one of the top saves. Basically, I was on the retention team, and I ended up just breaking records and crushing it. It was astronomical. I broke national records, daily records, but it wasn't a sales job. But they did say that we are the top salespeople because we were reselling the product to people that wanted it. And that was kind of my first taste of something like that in sales. And so I needed to get a new job, and I wanted to make more money. And my sister told me about this Yellow Page job, and so I went there and I interviewed. And they ended up hiring me, and they said, Vince, we don't normally hire anyone unless they have 5 years experience, because because Yellow Page sales is a very tough sell, especially back then. And they gave me the job. They said, Vince, because of what you did over here and the enthusiasm of your other job, we're going to give you a chance. So I started that job, and I told the story. I was making. They started me out on salary, and then I went commission. I realized if I went straight commission, I'd make more money. So I had a track record, and I was doing pretty good. And I thought, well, I'll go straight commission, right? So I went straight commission, and, man, the next day I got hit with all of this fear and, like, you're going to lose your car, you're going to lose your house, you're going to lose all. I mean, it just bombarded me. So I had to start just screaming back at it. No, I'm not. I'm going to make it. Well, I ended up making about $1,400 more that month than I would have. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it was a lot back then. And then I started practicing these principles. And a couple of the habits that I would do in sales is that one of them is that after every sale, well, first off, before the sale, I would go in there and I would see myself closing the sale, closing big deals, watching them write the contracts, and I could just envision it, and I'd walk in there with confidence, like I was going to get the sale, get them in multiple books, and then after, another thing that we taught ourselves is like after we would leave the sale or whatever happened in that meeting, we would go back and I would sit in my car and I would think about what I did and what I could have done better, and or if I did really good at it, or So I was always self-correcting. We were also going over objections all the time, different reasons why people wouldn't buy. So I had an answer. So I went in totally prepared mentally. I knew my products. I knew the competition. And then as time progressed, what ended up happening is I ended up outselling everyone. I outsold the top salesperson, and I remember telling my boss, I said, I'm going to be the top salesperson in this company. I go, I know you are, Vince, I know. And they weren't really tracking the numbers. They came back to me the next week, and they said, Vince, we were looking at the numbers, and they said, you are the top salesperson in the South Placer book. I said, are you serious? Because you're beating Jamie out. I was bringing in 4 times more new than all of them. And I said, are you serious? And because in Yellow Pages, people have a book of business, and so when someone's been there 15 years, it's hard to beat them. Well, I ended up beating them, and just absolutely crushed it. But during that, I realized there were certain habits I was doing, certain things I was doing, and that were helping me be really successful. And I remember one time sitting at my desk, and this can happen to anyone in sales. And I'm like, man, I got no deals. Things seem like they're slow right now. Is anything going to come in? And then, that little voice in your head can start talking to you, try to give you negative doubts, negative feelings, to basically to stop and shut you down, which is not true, but it can affect you. So what I did is I said, I looked on the wall and I looked at some of my past sales I had done, and I just started rehearsing kind of like what Michael Jordan did, like his success. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember when I sold that to that guy. And, oh, yeah, I remember that sell right there. Oh, yeah, I remember when I did that one. And it got me back into the framework like, Vince, you're selling. You're doing a good job. Keep going. Why are you even thinking this way? Because it can happen to anyone. And then, and here's another one. When I first started there, and I think I told you guys this story, and I'll just say it again just to have it here on the tape. But when I first started there, my first week, I went up to Truckee, and I got an appointment with a roofer. And so I go in there, and I'm sitting down, and he goes, okay, Vince, I think this looks good, and why don't you go write the contracts up? And I got another meeting, and when you come back, I'll buy this from you. So I leave there. I'm all excited. I'm writing the contracts up. I like doing backflips. And I come back in, and we sit down, and he goes, Vince, I got something to tell you. I go, what? He goes, well, you know that other meeting I had? I go, yeah. He goes, that was another Yellow Page company. And I actually gave them all my budget, and I can't buy anything with you. I said, what? I said, you're kidding me, right? I mean, this is all within, an hour and a half. I'm like, are you serious? I mean, I walked out of there so deflated and you got to be kidding me. Well, I picked myself back up, as discouraged as that was, and I went back to that guy, made him a different offer. My boss needed trade, so I went and I made him another offer, and he ended up doing trade, and then he ended up buying a bunch of stuff from me because I didn't give up. So a couple things that I want to help you guys with, that this has helped me be a top sales rep in almost just about every company I've been in. One, I believe in myself. I see myself selling. I see myself out there doing and it working. I don't allow my mind to go into failure. When it does, it can happen to anyone. I know I need to kick out of that and what I got to do. I meditate on my successes. I think about that. I believe. I have faith. Faith plays a really big part, a positive attitude. Because also when you walk into that sale or you get on the phone, people can feel in your voice where your confidence level's at. Another thing is that I would teach myself. I got better because when I did sell, I would say, what did I do wrong? How could I do it better? Or even when I was successful, I examined myself and said, okay, then you sold this much, but you could have done more. Where did And a couple things too. I have to really believe in my product, or I can't sell it because I don't believe in lying. And so it's really important to me that I believe in my product, understand my competition. And out of that, it really has caused me to be I've ended up being a number one sales rep at a number of companies and broke records and different things like that. But I really believe this is something anyone can do. I know when I was working at Earthlink, I was always challenging myself, and there was 4 different areas where they would grade us. And so I would say, who's the number one in customer retention? Who's the number one in time? Who's the number one with upsells? Who's the number one with quality assurance? There were different areas that they were judging us in. And I asked if I could go sit with the number one person in that area. And I was humble, and I learned from them. And I was able to take all that, my positive attitude, and I ended up breaking all these records. I had the most saved. I did in record time. One time, the day I broke the record, I ended up breaking the record with only 40 calls, which really it should have taken on the normal about 116 calls that day to do that, but I did it on a Sunday with 40 calls. So I learned that there was barriers, there were mental barriers, and I had to break through them. If I would break past those mental barriers, I would get a breakthrough. And then I remember people coming to me, and then they were, well, Vince, how do you do it? And then I would try to teach them, and they would be like, there was one guy, he honestly felt that he couldn't get a save unless he took 15 minutes on the phone with the person. And I was getting saves in like 30 seconds to 60 seconds or less. And he couldn't even imagine, or he wouldn't even challenge himself to do it faster. And so because he took longer, he couldn't do a whole bunch of saves because he was taking too long on the phone. And so I just kept working on my time, my speed, my connection with people. And that I was doing so well, they actually thought I was cheating. Everyone was accusing me of cheating. But they would record those phone calls, and then Rodolfo said, Vince, no, we go in, we listen to you all the time. You haven't cheated on one of them. But these are things that I've learned in sales, and I know we're a selling organization, and I love being around top salespeople. I love sales. I like, and these are secrets. And if you look, like there'll be something like people will make these statements like, man, I know I can just feel when I have it. I can feel that I got it. But you can always get better. You could always hone your skills. Now, when I went over and I stopped getting the commission, and when I stopped getting my salary and went straight commission, that's the first time I had done that one. That was very scary for me. And I didn't realize all the fear, doubt I was going to get hit with that I would have to battle through, but I ended up being way more successful. But one thing I learned, and the analogy I use is, just say that back in the old days you were a hunter, and the only way you were going to provide for your family is if you caught a deer or a fish or whatever, right? And if you didn't, then you would starve. Your family would starve. There would be no provision. So if you were in that situation, you would learn to be one of the best hunters or fishermen out there. You would learn secrets. You would do everything in your power. And I learned when I went straight commission and I got off the salary, I saw areas where I was weak. I saw areas where I thought I couldn't, I had back doors, or I started honing my skills when I was on the phone. I got really good at getting appointments. I got good at looking for leads. I mean, these are all these things I started honing in on, because I knew if I didn't hone in on it and get it, I wasn't paying my car. I wasn't going to be paying my bill for my house or food. But I learned to hone these skills in because it was a matter of survival. Now, I know it's one of the worst places to be in is to be selling out of survival. And this is another thing I learned too in sales. You know, we're not beggars. You never go in, you never beg. You have to believe in your product, and you have to sell exactly what is the best thing for the business owner, not what's best for you and your pocketbook or, you know. And I remember being many times in offices where I needed the money and I needed to sell, but I always put the customer first, and they felt that. And because they can pick up if you're not putting them first, if you're overselling them, you know, they'll end up with buyer's remorse. They'll be upset with you. So I always put the customer first, and they can feel that, and then I would end up getting sales. There was also many times where customers would call me on days like on a Friday at the end of the day. And back to Yellow Pages, they never called you. You had to call them always. But there were times I had bills to pay, and on that day I'd get phone calls in the morning. Hey, can we meet? Let's get that thing done. And I just saw miracles, you know, but I had faith. I believed. There were certain things I did. There were certain mentalities I kept. I kept honing my skills. Well, I ended up outselling that person. Within 2 years, I became the sales manager. And as the sales manager, I was still outselling. I ended up with some of the biggest accounts here. I got Bonnie and Plumbing. I got these huge plumber deals. Another thing that I did is we had a gal, and we called her the quarter column queen. And the reason why is because she could never sell any big items, and she would go in and the customer would sell her. Where like Jamie, myself, I figured out who buys the double trunks, who buys on the front, who buys the full pages. It was the plumbers, it was the lawyers, heating and air. And so I went after those customers, and that was another thing too. I went after big sales because, you know, when you're living off a commission, you can't be just selling, you know, like for us, I'd be like you just selling business directories and nothing else. You know, it's like you got to sell other big items if you're going to make some money here. So there is an art to selling, and you can improve your skills. And that's why they have tons of training, teaching, because these are some skills you can learn. Some people are born naturally with it, and some people you can learn it, you can hone in on it. But if you keep working on it, you can become a really great salesperson and really make a great living. Salespeople make the most money just about anyone because the sky's the limit. If you're a good salesperson, you could, you know, like especially with our company, there's no limit to what your income can be. You could just sell as much as you want to, whoever you want, and keep selling. These are residual products, and just keep making as much money as you possibly want to make. Now, Jeremy, can you go back? And before we go here, Jeremy, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Because I know Jeremy's a really good salesperson. He's got a pretty cool story also in his sales experience.
Yeah, not too much. I mean, I've kind of given my, testimony and talked before about, how I got in sales and with merchant services. And I had no sales experience before either. I was doing construction. A friend of mine asked me if and in fact, Vince just talked to that friend, also one of my ex-business partners the other day. His name is Sal. And he approached me one day. We used to bowl together, and he said, hey, aren't you exhausted? Aren't you tired of working 12, 14-hour days and, being a tile setter, I was on my knees. And he goes, tired of wearing your knee pads? Aren't your knees and your back sore? He goes, I got another opportunity here. He goes, so we kind of talked about it. And fast forward, I ended up, quitting that construction job, went into sales, no sales experience, and merchant services was a tough gig. I didn't know it. I was very naive. I had no idea really what I was getting myself into. And, I had like such confidence. I was so excited, and I went into it, and I hit the field, and I started cold calling, and I learned really, really fast about some of those fears that Vince has been talking about. And it really can get to you. And I was young at the time, so I was still trying to figure out that mental side of it, because I was like, wow, I know I can talk. I know people like me. I mean, I can build rapport with people. I know that. I know I'm strong, but how do I battle that mental part of it? Because if you go on a little bit of a pattern of no's, get out of my business, go away, you constantly getting that negative from people, it's really hard to try to drown that out and to stay positive. And I battled through that in the beginning. I think it was when I got my first sale. I was like, okay, I did it. I can do this again and do it over and over and over. So for the first probably week or so, maybe 2 weeks at most, I was really struggling with that mental side of it. But once I figured out how to control that, and then it just kind of started to come naturally, and things flow. And I would do the same thing. You know, I used to drive around with that guy Sal I was telling you about, that friend Sal of mine, and we would role play. I mean, when we would go in cold calling, we would go park like in a little strip mall, so there was a bunch of businesses because we were trying to maximize, you know, as many businesses as we could talk to without having to drive and park and go into one place and then get back in the car and go to another place. So we would try to find strip malls, places where there was at least, 12, 15 doors that we could go knock on. But we would practice constantly. And we wouldn't make it easy on ourselves. We wouldn't fake role play when I start role playing with somebody and I make it easy. No, we were as hard as we could possibly be on each other, because that was the reality. You're going to get faced with some of that sometimes, and the more you practice, like Vince was talking about Michael Jordan, the more you really start to just hone the skills and get very focused on the success side of it. The negativity and the failures really can just get set aside. Those can get very distant from your mind, and that's really what you need to do. I was thinking as you were talking, Vince, there's this recording. I think you can find it on YouTube. Arnold Schwarzenegger, long before politician, before he was the governor and all that. Well, he was a bodybuilder. And he was very, very, very focused. In fact, I played this recording for many salespeople that I trained when I was doing merchant services, because it's this big, long motivational speech. But one thing I always picked up that I remember most from that is he said, basically he was working out, and his regimen and everything was about 18 hours a day. He was 18 hours working out, eating food, doing everything he had to do just all day long, 18 hours a day. And he would sleep for 6 hours. And somebody said to him one time, he goes, well, I need 8 hours of sleep. And he goes, well, I don't know what to tell you. He goes, if you want to be successful, I suggest that you sleep faster. And I always thought that was funny. It's like, well, how do you sleep faster? Well, he was basically saying either you make the sacrifice to work really hard, or there's a chance that you're not going to be as successful if you just don't put your mind to it and just work as hard as you possibly can. And not always working hard, but working smart. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. Thanks, Vince.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's true. If you're going to be successful, and what's good, like when you see some of these people that are successful, they say that, success isn't a secret. It doesn't, there are secrets to that, meaning that they didn't just get there because they just had natural talent. These people worked hard, especially Arnold Schwarzenegger. Man, he worked really hard. Talk about working out every day to be a bodybuilder and to be compete at that level, or to compete at the top level of the NBA. These people have mindsets, they have mentalities, and that's what makes them successful. And they don't quit, they don't give up. They have, and here's another thing too. It's called self-talk. You really got to watch your self-talk. Some people, they really beat themselves up hard, or they don't believe in themselves. And then you walk into a room, and what you don't realize is when you're on a phone or you walk into a room, there's two conversations in every conversation. And people, they can hear your words, but they're also picking up like, I don't think they feel good about this, or they're not confident, or I don't think they like this, or they're not happy today, or people pick up on what's going on the inside of you. It's called a vibe. They get a vibe from you, and it's in your voice, it's in your presence, and that's the difference of where one person walks in and doesn't get to sell, another person walks in and gets a big sell. And you go, well, how'd that happen? Because the person's, and they usually, well, there was just something about him I liked, or there was just something about him I didn't like. And that's sometimes the deciding factor with people. So these are really important. Your presentation, how you are on the phone, your professionalism, and these are all skill sets that you can learn, you can hone in, you can get better, especially if you're a survival or if you want to be successful at something, depending on how successful you want to get, then you're going to really hone in those skills. So this is something that we really focused on, And I know we have a lot of great salespeople here. And, you know, even if you are great and you're a great salesperson will continually listen to this stuff and enjoy these conversations because they know that they feed off of it. It's kind of like, did you eat yesterday a hamburger? Well, would you eat a hamburger ever again? Sometimes you have to hear the same thing over and over again, and there's nothing because it's just feeding you. And sometimes you just got to make sure that, you know, it's good if you guys are getting, you know, self-help or, listening to, you know, things on the internet or people that can help you with getting better at sales. So, Jeremy, can you go over now to the virtual campus? In the virtual campus, you guys might not know this if you haven't been through there, but we actually put some advice in there and closing sales technique, improving your sales. So, Jeremy, can you go to improve your sales, improving your sales selling skills? I don't know if you've gone through these, but, you know, I went through there. Jeremy and I worked on these together. You know, we've had them in there for a while, but I would say go through here. This is some really good stuff. And, you know, right out of the gate, be a great listener. You know, a lot of times people are not very good at getting sales because they just don't listen to, you know, and I've seen this happen many times. For example, I was getting ready. I had this one guy who was going to buy from one of my, and I had my one friend that he was going to buy a product from. I had the deal closed. The guy asked him a question, and my friend starts talking about a book and going over here and over there. I'm like, answer the question. And finally I had to pull the conversation back on track because the guy asked a question and he wasn't even answering his question. I'm like, are you even listening to this guy? He just wanted a simple answer, and you just went on a 10-minute rant and rave about books and all this other stuff and never really answered the guy's question. You know, so it's really important because if you're a good listener, they will give you clues and cues on what they're looking for, what they want, and rather than try to sell them what you want, to find out what they want, find out what their needs are and what they want, and help them there, and it will go. And they'll also respect you for that. Jeremy, can you scroll down?
So, yeah, I just wanted to say something.
What's that?
I just wanted to say something really quick on that too. Is the listening part is so huge. I know when I was out in the field, and credit card processing wasn't the only sales job I had ever done, but listening to them, because like Vince said, though there's certain like cues almost where it's your turn to kind of get on the stage and present or close the deal. A lot of times the certain questions can be buying questions. And if you're not listening to them and you're just so focused, and that's the first one, focused totally on the other person. If you're too focused on your on yourself and what's beneficial for you, and you're not thinking about how this is going to benefit them, that vibe, they'll pick up on that. They'll know almost immediately, like they don't even care about me or about helping me. I can tell how they're avoiding my question or not listening to some of my comments, that they care more about themselves and how it's going to benefit them as opposed to benefit me. So that listening, and a lot of people may think, oh, yeah, listening, okay, yeah, we know to listen. But really, really listen to them, because same thing. There's been times where I've been on the phone with one of my sales reps kind of listening in, and I can tell that they just asked a buying question. And the guy or the gal that was working under me would just like totally float over it. Like, I'm like, no, that was an important question, and that was a really good opportunity for you to answer it, and then maybe ask your own question, you know, to keep the sale moving forward. So listen, make sure you're answering those questions and taking the time and really, really caring about that person's interests.
Yeah, and I don't have this in here, and I was thinking about adding this in here, but being prepared, you know, so in your first few minutes with that client or that potential salesperson is really going to set the stage, and they're going to assess you really quickly. When you walk in, so that's why we teach you guys to run the reports, you know, do the scan, find out what their reviews are, look at their website. Usually when I go into a meeting, I usually do a quick scan. I get a pretty good idea what's going on in that company. Another thing, too, is like if I'm meeting them in person and I'm going to their office, look on the walls, you know, see if they have a family, look if they're in the military, do they like golf. Sometimes relating to them, you know, don't just get right into the sell. talk to them. Try to form a friendship. People they're looking for someone they can trust and a friendship with, and be sincere about it. I mean, I actually, or just ask them questions like, hey, can you tell me about your business? I mean, when did you start it? What made you want to go into business for yourself? What were you doing beforehand? I mean, people love that. They love to talk about that. They, especially if they got an exciting story, and you can form some really good friends that way. And so by listening, so not jumping too quick into the sell, but doing your fact finding, learn about them, find out who they are, form a friendship, and then get in and say, hey, I got a couple of things I think can help, and and don't be like we'll get into this, where some people do the hard close. I personally am not a hard closer. I'm more probably an assumptive closer, which we'll get into that later. But how that initial conversation starts is a really big deal. If you're on the phone and you're not seeing them in person, you can learn a lot about someone by their website, sometimes by social media even. Hey, I saw, or like on their LinkedIn account without looking like you're spying on them or something. But like, hey, I noticed on here were you in the middle. I mean, you can strike up all types of conversation, and that little small talk can go a long ways. Now, when you start asking questions and you want to take notes, like make sure you're paying attention and sometimes writing this stuff down. And then the way that you know that you heard them is if you can repeat back to them. So let me say, sir, if I hear you correctly, you don't like your website, you want to get more reviews, and you would like to get some more videos. Is that what you're saying? And then you also been burned by a couple other marketing companies. You didn't like them putting into a contract. Am I hearing you correctly? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So taking notes and quoting and saying it back to them. So can you go down a little farther? Which I was just talking about, summarizing feedback. That's what I was just talking about right there. Go down a little farther, Jeremy. Okay, so that's right out of the gate. That's really important. Finding about them, learning about them, getting rapport with them. And then let's look at this right here, 5 effective sales strategies. Okay, this is really important. Make sure you're talking to the decision maker. You could have a conversation with someone and they can't even make the decision, or, and you could be wasting your time. Make sure you're talking to the person that can actually, and sometimes even asking, are you the one I talk to that makes the decision about this, or am I talking? You can actually ask that question right out of the gate. That could be one of your questions. Can you go down there, Jeremy? Keep scrolling down. Be real. This would just be yourself. Don't try to put on a salesy voice, act like someone you're not, or act like you like them and you don't. I mean, people can pick up on it. That's secondary conversation. Overcoming objections. This is really important right here, right? I know Nick, he went through a whole bunch of questions like with the Sotellus product. Well, does it do this? Does it do that? Can you get Truly on there? Can it be used? He went in and he's learned so much extra. I learned a lot about him even asking some questions, stuff I didn't even know that Sotellus could be used for. And because these were objections he was facing, and so he was able to, and if you don't have an answer, it's okay to not have an answer. Say, you know what, I don't have the answer to that, but I can get the answer for you. Can give me a moment. I'll either later today or I'll get back to you and I will have that answer. Especially if it's an objection that's hindering the sale. You want to make sure you get that answer and get it as fast as you can. Understanding your competition. Got to remember, you're not the only game in town. Make sure that you know your stuff, know who your competition is, study them. Can you go down a little farther? Watch what you say. Don't put your foot in your mouth. Keep to the point. Some people talk themselves out of a sale, or they just talk too much. I've seen that with some people. If they're a talker, it can work for you, but in some cases it can work against you because they're like, I can't even get a word in. This guy just talking. Or have you ever seen someone? This is something I had to self-correct myself because I used to do this. Is I would repeat myself again and again, like 3, 4, 5 times. I'm like, wow, why do you keep saying the same thing, Vince? Like, and people actually say, I hear you, I heard you the first time. When they're saying that, that means you're repeating yourself too much. Can you go down a little farther, Jeremy? 4 types of questions that lead to successful selling. So I think you guys should get a chance to read through this stuff. This was really good. situational questions, problem questions. I'm not going to go into detail. You can look in here, but what type of internet marketing are you doing? These are some help you with some questions and ideas and we kind of tailor made them for the products that we sell. Like, what impact has bad reviews or not enough reviews impacted your company? Do you even know? No. Then that's where you start stating facts. Some people already know, like, well, I know, I know it can't be good. I got a lot of bad reviews on Yelp. And, yeah, did you know one bad review can cost you 30 customers? No, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's what the facts say. Wow, I can help you fix that. Okay. Can you scroll down a little farther, Jeremy? Okay, keep going down. Implication, or need payoff questions. If you saw just a 10% increase, one thing too is I was talking to Jeremy about this is when you're selling like merchant services, maybe your selling point is we can save you money. That's not the best selling point when you're talking about internet marketing. Look, they'll pay extra if it works. They just want to get customers and they want it to work. So you have to approach it differently where you're not just trying to save them money. You actually maybe want them to spend more money. And that one story I was telling you guys earlier about the quarter column queen, she would walk in and she would be like hearing their story, how they're hurting, and she would sell them a small ad. Well, the problem with that is if you sell someone a small ad, they're not in the front of the book. You're actually doing them a disfavor, especially when it comes to marketing. Because if they don't do enough, they're just going to hurt themselves. And then the other big ads are going to get most of the calls. It was a proven fact. Whoever was the double trucks in the first pages got more calls. Yeah, they spent a whole bunch more money, but they also made a whole bunch more money. And the ones with the quarter columns, the really small ads, didn't get very many calls. So like Jamie, when she would walk in, she would hear she was like one of the top sales reps, and she would hear them, like, oh, we're hurting financially, and she would say, well, then the very thing you need to do is buy a double truck or get on the front of the book if you're hurting financially. We've got to get you out there. You've got to you've got to get your presence known. And you know what? It is so true. When you're talking about internet marketing and you're helping someone and they're going to get leads off it in business, you don't want them putting a small budget out there. You want to push that budget, especially now if you do like the paid traffic campaigns. If they spend that, like they bump up a little bit, they're going to get a lot more calls. And the calls themselves will generate the money and the income. We're not just trying to get them to save money. Their marketing is not just an expense. This is the ability that's supposed to bring them in tons of leads, tons of business. That's why, when we map things out for them and the program we put together, where we say, you first take care of your branding, right? Because you have to get your branding correctly. So when we start to send leads here, that people come and your website looks good. You got great reviews. You have your visibility. People find great things about you. And then you go out and you do your promotion, your branding, visibility, and promotion. Promotion is where you start to do heavy advertising on radio, TV, or paid traffic campaigns or Facebook, because then when they come and look at you, they're like, wow. And so you can send in some serious traffic. And Franklin is great. Pegasus is awesome at we're getting great response and people very, very happy with their paid traffic campaigns. He sends them out a video testimonial once a month showing how the campaign's working. So what we have put together is a very strong internet campaign, and it's one of the best because everything's going internet nowadays. So go down here, Jeremy, the last one, 9 strategies for upselling your clients. This is really important, especially in what we do, is because you want to sell customers on multiple products, and this is where you make a lot of money. But you can also sell too much in one setting. I think I was talking to Doak, and I get it because people can only handle about 3 or 4 products in one setting. Outside of that, it gets to be too much. You got to come back, but you can always come back to them a week later, 2 weeks later, and sell them more stuff. Because there is setup time. There's a lot that gets into. You want to make sure they're set up correctly. You got a lot of forms to fill out, and it could wear them out. But But, come in here for your upselling steady measurable goals, especially like with people on paid traffic campaigns. Within a month or two, you can upsell them, and they could get into more campaigns, larger campaigns, spend more money, and they will. Can you go down a little farther, Jeremy? Identify clients with a real need. You can talk to them about business loans, merchant cash advance, go after their merchant account, and we have so many different products, and we just keep adding more. But this right here is a really important thing that you really want to look at, because if you sell a client something, you could be leaving money on the table. You want to go back to them and get them on other things. So pitch ideas, not just upgrades. If you look in Agora, we have so many things that they can upgrade into, like a Servia, maybe podcasting. I mean, the list goes on and on. Who knows? The next 6 months, what else we're going to bring in here. So go back to your clients. Make sure that everything's working good. Double check, make sure they're getting reviews, and then by double checking on them, that they care, and you make sure things are on track. You should say when you get a sale, you should set up a follow-up call within a month, or at least 3 weeks, 2 weeks to a month. Make sure everything's on track, and that's also your opportunity to upsell them on other stuff. And if you stay with them, you can fix any problems and keep them happy. And if they're happy, they're going to buy more from you. But you could have a problem, and if you by neglecting it, someone could fall off, and they didn't have to just because you neglected them. But with what we do, upsells are really important. So transparent pricing breakdown. We're very fair with our pricing. We have great pricing. Identify trends, apply to your sales process. Can you scroll down a little farther? Meeting your clients on a regular basis. That's what I was talking about there. Yeah, meet with them. Some of my clients, I just meet with to call them up and sell them more stuff. Dr. Funk, I went back and sold him all types of stuff. He was even asking me for stuff. Well, I've even had a client said, "Do you have anything else?" Like, yeah, I do actually. So, Jeremy, can you go to the next one? And Jeremy, I'll have you go through this next one. Go back out to the main section, and then we have another category. Right there, closing techniques. I'll let Jeremy take over this one and talk about this one here.
All right, thanks, Vince. There was something that I wanted to mention that you had talked about a few minutes ago and this goes to building rapport. And I used to look at it as kind of almost being like an investigator. I almost felt like sometimes when I would go in on cold calls that I was almost like a spy. Because I would go into a business and I'd look on the walls, I'd look at pictures, I'd pick up on little things. Or if I walked in and maybe the gatekeeper said, "Oh, the owner's not here. He had to take his son to soccer practice or to baseball practice." Those are really good, important things to know, because I'm going to find out when he's going to be or she's going to be back in there. And when I go back in, I say, "Oh, I stopped in the other day. Your assistant said that you took your son to baseball practice, love baseball. How old's your son?" You just kind of start striking up that conversation, and you immediately start building rapport. That was probably the thing that I was strongest at. And some of you guys may have noticed this when I've been on the phone with your clients. I will kind of start to talk shop. And I do that for a reason, because I want to build that rapport, because you guys already have the rapport, most likely the relationship, but I want to kind of have my own rapport with them, because I'm always on the lookout if we get a new product, or I'm always kind of paying attention to what's going on with some of your clients. So I used to do that a lot. I just think it's funny that you said that, Vince, because I used to do that just like nonstop. That was my thing. And my buddy Sal used to kind of always give me crud for it. He goes, "Man, you talk to them way too much." And I go, No, I don't. I said, "I think I talk to them just enough." I said, "I talk to them to the right about." I said, "Because you ever notice that when I'm talking with them, we hit it off and the conversation goes, and we're having a back and forth conversation, whereas sometimes you go in and you're too much straight to the point and they may just brush you off. You haven't taken the time to listen to them and to get to know them." Him and I learned a lot from each other, because he was definitely in that hard close category, where I think, like Vince said, more of the assumptive close. I was definitely that way too. I would almost get to the point where they would just ask me, "Okay, what do we do? What do we have to do? What do we do next?" Like I'd almost just build such a strong friendship with them and show them the value without doing it in a hard way. A lot of times they would just ask me, okay, I like it. What do we got to do? Paperwork? Tell me. Let's go. So I just wanted to talk about that, which leads us right into the 7 different types of sales. You have the assumptive, the backwards, relationship, takeaway, trial, hard close, and just flat out asking for the sale. Sometimes number 7 is your best bet, especially if you notice that they are kind of feels like they're kind of stringing you along, or that you're just not really getting that opportunity to close the deal. Sometimes you just have to just flat out ask them for the sale. And that's worked for me too. Sometimes me building rapport has backfired once in a while to where I'm kind of like, all right, I just have to ask for it, because now they just love me and they just want to sit here and talk all day long, and I kind of opened up that can for myself, but I wanted that. But then you just have to know when it's time to stop and just ask for the sale. So let's go into these. The first one, the assumptive close.
Hey, Jeremy, I was going to add one thing in too.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
When you have that rapport with your client, it also helps you when things go haywire. We actually had a situation, and it was one of Troy's clients, and where Pegasus was a little late getting the page up there, and then there was some reporting not being done 100% correctly with 99 Social, and then he gets his report from the business directories, and it's not as high as he wanted to be, and so he's like, "Oh my God!" Right? But Troy has a good friendship with him, and I formed a good friendship with him. I actually built one of his websites, and I gave him the last month for free. I didn't make him charge, so we have a friendship, and But each one of those things, when we dug into it, we held off his billing. So he was happy with that. 99 Social, when we dug into it, he actually got double what he was supposed to get. They just didn't communicate well to him. So we worked with 99 Social to get the communication better. And then when it came to the directories, the reason why they were showing low is not because he didn't do the work, is because he had a different name on his Yelp account, and so it wasn't showing up. But everything was done and handled right. But because we had rapport, we were able to fix that, and that actually was I really enjoyed going through that, because when the customer was unhappy, when we dug into it, we realized, like, wow, we actually are doing a good job. But there was a couple adjustments we had to make, and then he was happy, and now he's back on track. We're talking to him. He's going to be buying another campaign for Facebook and all that. So keeping that rapport goes a long ways, where it's more than just a business transaction. You want to form a friendship with them.
Absolutely. I like to make friendships with people, not just, business relationships. I like to be able to call somebody up and check in on them. Hey, how you doing, buddy? And, it's just a lot more comfortable, and it feels right, to me. So let's talk about the assumptive close a little bit more. So what is the assumptive close? Okay, so basically, in short, you're assuming the whole time, hence the name assumptive close, that you're going to get that sale from the moment that you walk in, or leading up to that appointment. You're just assuming all the time, and it's very much a mindset thing, which is right down here below. And that was something that after I kind of got shaken up the first time in sales, that I started just being an assumptive closer. I would go in, I knew what I was selling was beneficial for them, so I was very confident in the service. So I just flat out assumed all the time, eventually I'm going to close this deal. This person is eventually going to be my client. And if I had already been there a couple times, 2 or 3 times I was going back, I would always just assume it every single time, staying very positive. We've talked about the mindset, but the state of mind when you're talking about assumptive close, I think, is the most important on the assumptive close, is just being positive in your mind the whole way through, because you're assuming already in your mind that they're going to buy, and maybe they don't know that they're buying yet. So you have to just stay positive and remind them that they're going to buy from you today or tomorrow, or when your appointment is. And it's talking about your customer state of mind too. So believe it or not, people do love to buy things. They just sometimes don't like being sold certain things. So I know personally, for me, being in sales and being in sales for a while, I like to buy stuff. My wife laughs at me. I mean, a few years ago, I bought a Kirby from a guy that came knocked on the door. And you know why I bought the Kirby? It wasn't necessarily just for the vacuum and what it could do. The guy was a great salesperson. Ironically, his name was also Jeremy, which I think probably kind of played into my mind a little bit too. I'm like, oh, this guy's, Jeremy. But him and I kind of struck up a friendship. He did a really good job of building rapport with me. He came into my house. We hit it off. He was there for a couple hours. I fed him dinner. I mean, I like buying things, and people do generally enjoy buying things. It's just they don't always like being sold something if they're not really interested in it. So you just got to kind of keep an eye on that. Low pressure.
Jeremy, I was going to say, too, when you're a salesperson, you appreciate being a professional salesperson selling to you and not doing any cheesy tactics on you. I have a story. One time I was going to buy this red Mustang, and I had picked it all out, got my money together, and I went over to the car lot, and I started talking to the guy, and I asked him a question about the rims, if I could switch out, and he just didn't seem helpful and had a bad attitude. I'm like, I had the money. I was ready to buy. He didn't know that. So I didn't give him my name, my number. I didn't want him any credit. I left. I waited about 8 hours. I came back. I found another sales rep that I liked. I asked him the same question. He had a better attitude. And guess what? In the long run, I wasn't able to get what I wanted, but I still went ahead and bought because I liked the guy. And the other guy didn't even know. One other thing I was going to talk about, too, is I know a lot of what we do is on the phone. And I just wanted to add this in because this is something I wanted to squeeze into this call. Is how do you know if you're calling someone too much or too little? Like, let's say when you're trying to do a follow-up phone call and, you call them 3 times a day. Do I call them once a week? Because you can call someone too much or you can call them too little. And my only way I can answer it is kind of like a dating relationship. How do you know if you're calling someone too much or too little? Well, I guess it really depends on how it's going, right? If they like you and they're responding, they're picking up the phone calls, you can call them a little bit more than someone else. And if they're not picking up, they're not responding to your voicemails, well, then get the hint. You're probably calling them too much. So it's something you have to kind of get a feel for, and there's no real 100% direct answer. But you got to make sure you're not calling someone too much or calling them too little. You could stretch the call out, and you could actually lose the deal. So back to you, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, I used to do a lot of follow-ups, like I said, in the merchant services. It was very, very rare that I would walk in to a business owner for the very first time and walk out with paperwork on a merchant account. I would say on average, probably 4 to 5 visits is generally what it was for that. And there was a lot of phone calls in between me physically going back and following up. I would follow up with their phone calls. Sometimes they would say, hey, I'm very interested. I liked what you said. I obviously want to save some money. This week's bad because so-and-so and so. Okay, yeah, no problem. I can come back next week. I know I just kind of walked in off the street. I didn't expect you to, move your schedule and your life around for me, but, I want to help you out. I'm a local guy. I'm from the area. I want to help business owners. And I used to ask them when I would call, or I would say to them, rather, I wouldn't really ask them. I would just say, hey, Dave, this is Jeremy. I met with you last week. I hope I'm not bugging you, or I'm being a bugger, And he go, oh, no, not at all. In fact, I'm glad that you're, staying in contact with me. Or sometimes I would just call him before I was getting ready to go back down there for a scheduled appointment. Hey, just a reminder, I'm going to be stopping back by. I didn't want to bug you. I'm sure you didn't forget that I'm coming back by, tomorrow at noon or whatever. So sometimes I would just flat out say, I hope I'm not bugging you. And most of the time, maybe they were just being polite. I don't really know if I really was bugging them. But most of the time they would say, no, No, you're not bugging me. And then I did on occasion have a couple of people go, you kind of, you're kind of calling me too much. I know that you're there. I'll call you when I'm ready. And then just to kind of back off, and you're getting a little too aggressive with them, and you could end up losing the sale if you are a little too aggressive and follow up too much. So back to what Vince was saying, is it just kind of depends how it's going, and you just have to feel out that situation and make a judgment call. So the thing with the assumptive close is it's very much a low pressure situation, and that's what I think. The reason why I think the assumptive close has worked really well for me, because I'm not into that high pressure, hard close type of thing. I've been on the receiving end of that, and I hated it. And Vince had mentioned that before when he wasn't in sales, he was a little bit hesitant and wasn't sure because he was thinking about the car salesman, and a lot of times the car salesmen are very, very aggressive. I've only met a handful of car salesmen who are actually kind of relaxed and do a little bit more of an assumptive close. Usually the ones that are less aggressive are extremely great listeners. They just listen to everything that you're telling them, and then they just provide exactly what you ask for, as opposed to them offering you what they want you to buy or what they want you to start thinking about. So if you're doing the assumptive close correct, it's going to be very much low pressure, very fluid. If you ever find yourself having to kind of transition over into some hard close techniques, then something went wrong, along the way, with the assumptive close. And that goes back to just kind of replaying in your mind, figuring out, okay, where did I kind of lose this person? Because things were going really, really good, and then I kind of got a snag, and I had to get a little bit more aggressive than I wanted to, and I think that, rubbed them the wrong way and delayed or impeded the sale in some way. Okay, so now let's go to the backwards close. So most every sales professional was taught that sales cycles follows a predetermined number of steps. Those in sales should start at step one and do everything they professionally can to move all the way to the final step. But what if they start at the final step and ask for referrals? This is the backward closing technique that starts where most sales end. This can work really, really well. I've done this a handful of times. Is sometimes you go in and just say, hey, I'm in the area, I'm helping a lot of business owners. I'm helping them with this. Do you know anybody in the area that might be interested in this? You're kind of almost assuming that they're not, and then as soon as they kind of start to show some interest, that's, to me, in my interpretation of kind of what a backwards close is. You're starting at the end and asking for referrals or people that they know, as opposed to asking them to become your customer, because they almost kind of feel like they're getting left out at that point, and they're like, hey, me, what about me? I know me, I can refer me. Vince, is there anything you want to add into the backwards close? That's just kind of my short version of what a backwards close is to me and how I've used that before in the past, but maybe there's something you
No, or some people say, like, get the referral, because you usually get the referral at the end of the deal. And, remember, all these are just tools. And so a really good salesperson, you really have to discern who you're talking to and what tool to use. So this is not one that I use all the time, really, but some people it works for them. So we're just here to give you tools.
Yep. All right, let's jump into the next one. The relationship close. Okay, so I think this is kind of self-explanatory here. If you already have a relationship with somebody, when I used to train sales reps for merchant services or any other things that I've done, I always kind of told them low-hanging fruit. Who are people that you already know that are in business, they're business owners? It doesn't even necessarily need to be that you know them personally, but that you have some sort of relationship to them. Maybe it's your best friend's brother, or your brother's best friend, or your sister's best friend. Having a relationship with somebody can definitely expedite, because that some level of rapport can already be there. There can be some level of trust already built that you don't have to tackle those steps along the way. So I used to ask people to create what I call the cheers list. Remember that old show Cheers, the song, Go Where Everybody Knows Your Name? That's what I used to tell them. I said, this is your Cheers list because you want to go to places that already know you, already know your name. You're going to have a lot better success, and it's going to help you also learn at the same time because you're not as uncomfortable. This isn't somebody that you don't know at all. You already have a relationship with this person, so it gives you some time to kind of relax and learn a little bit as you go. So the relationship close, if you have those type of relationships, those can be really, really quick, easy closes to have.
This is where like leads groups or BNIs or Chamber of Commerce, where you go on a regular basis and you form a lot of friendships, because people just buy from you directly because they formed a friendship with you and they're going to refer you out. But I would highly recommend getting involved with some sort of group on a regular basis. BNIs are really good, whatever's in your area. LaTip, I did LaTip, and that worked out really good for me. Then there's some people just start their own even and write your own rules and get people going. If you get like 10, 20, 30, I had a group that I was leading, and if you lead it, all the better. If you can lead a group, that's even better because they trust the leader more, right? But I led a group, and I had probably 40 to 45 people showing up, and that's where I got a lot of my business for Agora when I joined a group when I first started working at Agora. And then I ended up becoming the leader of that group.
Yeah, networking and being a part of groups can, there's, Vince already mentioned his name, Doak. He was one of my reps early on in credit card processing, and I trained him and taught him pretty much everything that he knows about credit card processing, but he was a heck of a salesperson. I can't take, I could take a very little amount of credit for his success simply because he's motivated. He's, the guy is just incredible. He works long days. This is constantly going. He's got it very well fine-tuned. And, but yeah, he's
wasn't he visiting like 15 businesses a day also? There's another thing just about sheer numbers. More than that? Yeah. So like some people just don't see enough people or call enough people. It's really just a numbers game. If you tackle on high numbers and really good skill sets, you're going to make a lot of money as a sales rep here.
Yeah, I used to tell, and it can be a little bit harder depending on what area you're in. Obviously, there's, certain cities, certain states have, higher population, different, like strip malls where there's larger number of businesses in a small proximity. But I used to 30 to 50 a day, and that's what I used to tell the people that I trained. I said, if you're going to be out in the field cold calling, 30 to 50 businesses a day, because it's just a numbers game. You might, out of 40 people, 38 of them may tell you no, but you still had 2 people. You do that every single day. By the end of the week, you have now 10 warm leads that you can go back to, and maybe 60 to 70% of those actually end up closing. Okay, so you generated yourself 5, 6, 7 deals in a week. They may not.
And you build your pipeline.
It's a pipeline.
You build your pipeline, and then also the ones you sold to start referring. So as you start getting more sales, your referrals start cranking up. I remember one of the companies where I was getting 5 referrals a week in direct mail, which was huge, that were ready to buy because of just straight referral. When they called me, they had credit card in hand off a referral.
So let's go into the takeaway close. I worked with this guy, and I've enjoyed using the takeaway close from time to time. Some people are really good at it. I don't think that that's probably one of my strongest closing techniques, but it is one of the strongest closing techniques that can be used. But there was this guy that I used to work with, man, and his office was right next to mine, and I used to listen to him all the time because he was one of the top salespeople. It was me and him and a couple other people were always battling. And I was always the assumptive closer. He was a takeaway closer. Another guy was top sale. He was very much a hard closer. So it was really interesting that there was always 3 or 4 people that were the top closers every single month, and we all did it differently. we had a hard closer, a takeaway closer, a assumptive closer, but we're always battling. So I used to try to pick up on some things that they were saying, but this guy was incredible. I would just hear him on the phone, and he would basically have a deal almost sold, or he'd be getting close to it, and then basically want to throw a wrench into into all the momentum that he just built up to get there. He would get them really close, and he goes, you know what? I'm not really sure that this program is for you, or this might not be something that you want to do today. You might want to wait. It was like I almost like cringe sometimes. I'm like, oh, you want to close them now. Why would you want to tell them not to do it today, or that it's not for them? And then the next thing I know, he'd be sitting there filling out a contract. So it could be super powerful. You got to be a little bit careful with it because it can backfire, and any of these closing techniques can backfire sometimes, and you just got to kind of pivot and push forward. But the takeaway close is probably one of the strongest ones out there. Vince, have you ever, or anybody on the phone,
That's
ever
actually
used
probably
takeaway? Or
yeah, and I usually do a combination of assumptive takeaway. So I go in there, I'm assuming, but the way I do the takeaway is I don't do a full takeaway. I do a partial, like, hey, if this isn't for you, I get it. I'm just here to help you. But then I go back into assumptive. But I throw that in there because it lets them know that I'm not desperate for this sale. I'm not controlled by it. Or I'll make statements like, I'm just here to help you. I don't really need the money. I'm just here to help you out and find something good for you, which is true. And you got to make sure you're not lying at all. And you got to, I've gone on some sales calls with other reps before, or they'll be out there with me, and you're right, the takeaway, you can just feel the other sales rep just cringe, especially if you're trying to close their deal for them. I can almost not do it for them because I just feel them cringe too much, and some people interrupt me and get in there. But I've done this so many times and closed so many deals. I just feel it's important sometimes to throw out there like, hey, we don't need this. There's no pressure. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But then I jump right back into assumptive close. It basically backs the pressure off, and it also lets them know you're not desperate. And then you really get down to like, is this a great product, and do you need it? And once the pressure of like, wow, this guy is, once you back out like, wow, this guy doesn't just trying to make money here. He's actually trying to help me because that's actually my motive, and I want them to get that feeling. And I use the takeaway to do that.
Yeah, take the pressure off again. Not make it a high pressure, sale, a high pressure environment, because they'll feel that, and then they start to pull themselves back rather than them pulling themselves in, which is what a takeaway sale basically is. Here's a little example: is the sales professional. I understand that you may not be ready to move forward with the whole project. So what if you started with just a website, and then later we can fix your reviews and get on top of Google? Now, the customer could be thinking something like, well, I don't like the fact of not getting on top of Google or fixing my reviews right now. So what basically is happening there is by you suggesting for them not to purchase it, they're almost closing themselves by imagining not getting something that they know is important or something that they want or should have. And I've heard you do it on the phone, Vince, before several times. And the guy I was mentioning, he used to do it. I mean, he was just so good at it. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever be as good as a takeaway closer as this guy was. He had it down. He was super good at it, just to a science. And but it's very powerful. Just taking away, basically telling them, no, you don't need it, or not that you don't need it, but that you don't need to have it right now, or maybe this isn't a good fit for you. They kind of almost felt like they're getting left out, and they want it. Right? No, I want it. I do want it. Don't take it from me. I actually do want it. Okay, let's go. Let's go ahead and do it. Trial close. So, the trial close it's really more of you're asking them questions like, example would be, if I were to do this for you, could we do business together? If I did A, could we get to Z? It's this trial closing is really a series of questions where you are kind of asking for the sell, but with a contingency. if I accomplish this, if I get you this price, if the product can do this, there's a lot of ifs, then would you do business? And really with the trial close, you already know the answer. It's not like you're setting yourself up, like you're asking them a question that then you have to go get the answer to. You're asking them a question that you already know the answer to. So you're getting them to agree that if this product can do this, or if the price is right, whatever the if is, that if I can do this for you, or it will do this for you, are we doing business? So you're getting them to agree to do business with you really before the deal is closed. And I've used that a lot too, in credit card processing. I go, if I'm able to save you this, or if I'm able to get you this terminal for this price, if I can do this for you, well, can we do business today? Or can we do business, or can we get the contract signed tomorrow when I come back? And I already know the answers. I already know I was going to be able to save them money. I already knew what price I could sell the terminal to them for. I already knew my answers. I just wanted them to kind of get them on the hook to agree that if I can accomplish this for them, that they will do business with me. And I know Vince,
one thing that I
a lot
say,
too.
Yeah, one thing that I do on my trial close, and this one really helps me too, because number one, it helps me find out if they want to buy, and then also when they want to buy. So I'll say something to like, so is this something that you want to get going right away, wait a couple of weeks, or what's your time frame on this? And they go, no, I think I want to get started right away. And I know, like, the credit card's coming out today, or like, well, I need to talk to someone, my wife, or I need to get back, but I'm thinking next week we'll do this, or I got this deal I got to close, and then I know right where they're at, and also in that one question I find out if they want it and when they want it, which is really important, and it really helps. And then I've closed many deals same day just with that right there, and it helped me because they just told me I want to buy this, and so. It's so I go through all the fact finding. I show them all the facts. I show them the products, find what they want, have really good rapport with them, and then I ask that question at the right time, and it just works like a charm. And it's a great question to ask.
I think personally, car lots is where I've heard the most trial closes ever. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that. You go in, you're looking for a car, and they're going to hit you with a lot of ifs. I can do this for you. If I can make this payment for you, car salesmen, I think, have mastered the trial close, and I've seen that time and time again. I'll go in and, we're talking, I'm telling them what I want, what my payments need to be. So once they know that I'm an interested buyer, they'll start hitting me with a lot of trial close questions. And I know what they're doing, and they're doing it the right way. I mean, they're kind of assuming the sale at that point almost at the same time. But, if I can get this payment on that car, this is what you want. If I can get you that payment, are you going to buy the car today? If I talk to my manager and I get them to throw in a steering wheel cover, whatever it is. But they do that a lot. They're pretty good at it. And it works. Sometimes it can come off to some people as a little bit too aggressive, a little bit of a hard close, because at this point, I don't think anybody gets hit with a trial question or trial closing question at a car dealership and they don't already know what's going on. You can smell it. You know what they're doing. And if you're an interested buyer, it's not really going to bother you because you're going to end up getting what you want at the same time because they're already telling you, if I provide you what you want, are you going to buy? And I'll tell them, yes, if you can get this payment or if you can get that worked out for me, yes, I'll get the car today. Or sometimes I'll tell them, and I've had customers tell this to me too, yes, I will, but it won't be today. And that's fine. At least you know that that you guys are on the same page, and you're not starting to assume you're going to close the deal right that second if that's maybe not on their schedule and they need to do it tomorrow or next week. That's fine. You just scheduled the close. And there's been a lot of times where I've had to do that, where I have to literally schedule a close to go back another day and actually get everything done. And I'd say most of the time, a very high percentage, it's always came to fruition. There's been a small handful of times where, okay, yeah, I'll do the paperwork 2 days from now. I go back and something changes, like Vince said with the Yellow Pages, and he went to his appointment in Truckee. An hour and a half later, he didn't have a sale. That sometimes can happen, but most of the time it won't if you're asking the right questions and the relationship is strong. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next one where already a little bit over time for what we typically would do our call for, but that's okay. We're covering a lot of good stuff. So the hard close. I was just talking about car dealerships. That's one that they very much are into the trial closing and hard closing. And sometimes you have to know and you kind of have to, smell the situation out or feel the situation out to see if it's an appropriate time. Sometimes you have to hard close with some people. They'll just drag you along and drag you along and drag you along for whatever reason. It's that sometimes you just kind of have to get right to the point and just get a little bit aggressive, not in a mean or unprofessional way, but you have to almost hard close some people. And my buddy Sal that I used to work with, he was really good at this, and sometimes he would actually even come and bail me out because I would build so much rapport and they would like me so much that sometimes it worked against me where they go, you know what, we have a great relationship now. I can kind of put him off, or now it's on my schedule. Or, and if I felt that was happening, I would sometimes ask Sal, like, hey, can you come to this appointment with me? Because I've been chasing this person down for, the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and you're really good at just sometimes, cutting through the BS or calling them on the BS. Would you mind just coming with me? I'll just say that you have an appointment down the street, we're carpooling, whatever it was. And there's sometimes that he helped me out with that. And vice versa. A lot of times where he was having trouble building a relationship or building rapport with somebody, I would kind of come in and, good cop, bad cop almost. So the hard close definitely can work. I believe that a lot of people don't prefer the hard sale. Some people are very good at it, but I think on the receiving end or the person being sold, sometimes they don't appreciate it. But there's definitely a time and a place for it. You just have to know when. I think in my experience, I've probably only had to hard close, maybe a handful of times. I could probably count on one hand. And that was just because they were just dragging. I knew they wanted to buy, but there was just something. So I just had to get a hard close. And it kind of just takes us into the last one I'm going to click into is just asking for the sale. The hard close and asking for the sale, I think there is, a somewhat of a fine line between the two of those. We have to get, really hard, aggressive on them, but in a professional way, and just flat out ask for the sale. Hey, are we going to do business? We've been talking now for a while. It seems like you're interested, or that you like what I have to offer here. Are we going to do business? Are you going to sign up with me today? Or are you going to buy this product? And use it tactfully. Sometimes that can be a little bit too aggressive too for the wrong person. So just filling out the situation, filling that person out. But sometimes they'll just appreciate that too, because everybody's on a schedule. Everybody has to keep the time in mind. So there's a lot of times that they'll just appreciate you kind of just getting down to it too, because you may end up talking too much or asking too many questions when really they're already sold. And there's sometimes that they'll give you hints, and like Vince had said, repeat yourself sometimes, which I've probably repeated myself a few times on this phone call already. But you got to pick up on some of those things. Like, yeah, I heard you the first time, or yeah, I hear where you're coming from. Sometimes certain people just need to be told what to do, or you just have to ask them if they're doing business and just get down to it if the wheels are spinning. All right, Vince, is there anything else that you want to end with, or anything else that we want to cover on this call?
Can you put that one picture up that I had of Michael Jordan, the second picture I sent you? I'm not in front of a computer, too, so let me know when it's up.
Well, you sent me two other ones. Is that the dunk?
The second one I sent you. The one where it's a close-up with his hand.
Got it.
Let me know when it's up.
Okay, it's up now.
So, look how successful he was, right? When you hone your skills and you really work on this stuff, there really is an art to selling. And this is one thing I used to say also. When I was a PE teacher, I was at a Christian school, and we had a dress code. And my principal said something. He said, He said, Vince, I hate having a dress code because you're stifling the students and you're this, right? And he goes, but I also hate not having a dress code, because when you don't have a dress code, then what happens is people come in and who knows what's on the front of their shirt or whatever they're wearing, and inappropriate stuff. But we also don't want to control them so much where, they're so stifled. So there's a fine balance. So when you're teaching things about sales, I hate actually having to try to teach this stuff at one level, but I also hate when I don't, because I've seen people make so many mistakes with people, and I'm like, man, don't you know not to do that? But then we also don't want to get you so rigid where you're, it's like you're a gimmicky salesperson out there, and, and you got all these little tactics that you're trying to work the customer over, right? That's not really the attitude either. We're just trying to give you some guidelines. But the number one guideline is, if you really care about your customer and taking care of them first, that's number one. Number two, know your products. Make sure you're not selling them something they don't need or overselling them. You'll have buyer's remorse. Know your competition. Know your pricing. Know everything. Hone your skills, because the more, but the number one thing that, you can't totally teach someone is, like, just really care. Because I've been around some sales reps and they just don't care. And, here, like I did a timeshare one time, and I went in and I'm at who you guys, I'm sure some people can relate to this. So I go in there, we watch the whole thing, and the guy goes, hey, just go in the back, you'll talk to someone, no pressure, and they won't pressure you to buy, you don't have to buy anything, just talk to them, right? So, okay, so I get back there. Well, number one, that was a lie, because the person I talked to started pressuring me. And I said, I'm not prepared to make a $30,000 to $50,000 decision in 5 minutes. I said, can I come back tomorrow? Will this deal be? No, this deal will not be here. And then the person started getting mad at me. I said, are you serious? And I actually told him this, right? I said, are you serious? Are you getting mad at me right now? Because I'm not willing to make a $30,000 to $50,000 decision that could affect my credit. I said, and you're going to pressure me, and then you're going to get mad at me because I'm not ready to make that. I go, this is a terrible salesperson. And I just said, I walked out, because that was rude of them, to high pressure me on something that could really affect my life and put me in heavy debt. And I said, I'm not making a decision that fast. I go, I got to think about it. You're not going to high pressure sales me. And they got mad at me, but I was mad at them. So, I'm sure we've all had the bad and the wrong. And we're trying to create a culture here in Agora where we do really care. I actually do. We are interested in our clients. We're interested in you, your life. We care about them. But we also want you to learn how good techniques and to really master your skill set here and become just an awesome seller, because you can make a lot of money in sales, especially with Agora, with all the products we're selling. And the more you hone your skills, the more money you're going to make, the more fun you're going to have. And bottom line, go out and have fun. Enjoy yourself, your clients, and you'll make a lot of money. You'll enjoy what you're doing. We don't pressure you here. We just want to help you guys succeed. And helping your customers succeed is helping you succeed.